as it faces a new wave of migrants and refugees from Syria and other parts of the Middle East. Filippo Grandi says existing resources must be reinforced.
Push, the responsibility away will not solve the problem. The problem needs to be solved with CAL, with systems that are existing, reinforcing them with resources and with sharing.
Last week, Turkey said it'll no longer uphold a 2016 deal with the European Union to keep hundreds of thousands of migrants on its soil in return for aid money. Since then, around 10,000 migrants have reached Turkey's land borders with EU states, Greece and Bulgaria. Most of them are from Syria, other Middle Eastern states, and Afghanistan. The Greek Prime Minister says the crisis on his country's border with Turkey is a threat to the border of the European Union. The Russian military's rejected criticism that Russia and Syria are responsible for a humanitarian crisis and millions of refugees from the Syrian province of Idlib. The Russian Center for Reconciliation of the Warring Parties in Syria says the statements are biased and completely untrue. The Russian center says it's carried out continuous monitoring of the humanitarian situation on Syria's northwestern regions over the past few years, using drones, telephone hotlines, social networks, and direct contacts with locals. It adds that more than 35,000 people, mainly families of militants, have left the war zones in Syria and moved to Turkey since the beginning of the year. This is Shane Bigham live from the Chinese capital. Coming up in business, Wall Street tumbles after the Fed cuts rates. 37 minutes past the hour now. Turning to business, Wall Street tumbled in a volatile session after the Federal Reserve surprised investors with a 0.5 percentage point cut in interest rates, amplifying fears about the magnitude of the coronavirus impact on the economy. Chairman Jerome Powell noted that the virus poses evolving risk to economic activity. And Powell says the move is to help bolster the economy amid uncertainties.
Against this background, the committee judged that the risks to the U.S. outlook have changed materially. In response, we have eased the stance of monetary policy to provide some more support to the economy. Of course, the ultimate solutions to this challenge will come from others, particularly health professionals. We can and will do our part, however, to keep the U.S. economy strong as we meet this challenge.
The Fed's first rate cut since last year when it reduced its key short-term rate 3 times. It's also the first time the central bank has cut its key rate between policy meetings since the 2008 financial crisis, and the largest rate cut since then. DataTrek Research co-founder Nick Colas addresses the impact of the rate cut on markets.
At this point, we're so close to zero. I think markets and investors worry that there's only so much the Fed can do in terms of the cost of money. And so even though 50 basis points sounds like a lot, and we all know the lineup of prior 50 basis points events, that comes at much lower interest rates than every prior time the Fed has cut rates by 50 basis points. And so we wonder how much effect it'll really have. So the bottom line is no, it's not going to have a big effect.
At the closing bell, the Dow Jones Industrial Average fell 3%. The S&P 500 lost 2.8%. The NASDAQ Composite dropped nearly 3%. Major stocks in Europe, including Britain's FTSE 100, France's CAC 40, and Germany's DAX, all rose around 1%. In Asia, Chinese stocks closed higher yesterday, with the benchmark Shanghai Composite up by 0.7%. The Shenzhen Component Index closed 1% higher. Singapore stocks closed higher, with the benchmark Straits Times going up by 0.4%. Chinese automaker Geely says it's investing nearly 2.3 billion yuan, or $330 million in a new satellite manufacturing plant. A tech firm owned by Geely plans to launch a pair of low-orbit satellites this year. The project's expected to offer more accurate data for self-driving cars. Analysts say the move is part of Geely's efforts to take on its global rivals such as Tesla amid fiercer competition in the sector. The Chinese car maker came to the spotlight after its acquisition of Volvo cars back in 2010. China's telecom carriers will build over 500,000 5G base stations this year, saying the ongoing novel coronavirus outbreak will not disrupt their progress. China Unicom and China Telecom will team up to build 250,000 5G base stations in the first 3 quarters of this year, finishing the year-end target in advance. In the first half of this year, they'll build 100,000 base stations to cover 47 cities. Meantime, China Mobile will build 300,000 5G base stations by the end of this year. And with more on this, Sui earlier spoke with John Ross, Senior Fellow of the Shenyang Institute for Financial Studies of Renmin University.
We're talking about telecom carriers say they will build at least 550,000 5G base stations this year, despite the coronavirus outbreak. So first question is, what role will 5G play in the transformation of China's economic growth pattern?
Well, this is a case in which China is going to be leading the world. In general, of course, China's technological development is not yet at the front overall as the United States, for example. But on the question of 5G, it's ahead. I mean, because Huawei is the world's leading company in this, and China's put immense resources into it. 5G is going to revolutionise whole areas of the economy, because it's not just a question of it's going to be better. I mean, human users will see things like quick downloading of videos and things like that. But actually, it's going to allow the so-called Internet of Things, communication of machines. It's going to take the base for automated driving and so on. So it's going to have a radical transformative effect on every economy in which it's rolled out, and it's going to be rolled out a big time in China first.
So what are the challenges for 5G development in the global market?
Well, the biggest challenge is the stupid Western boycott it's not a Western boycott, sorry, it's the US boycott of Huawei, which is going to slow down the situation in the US, and the pressure that the US is putting on other countries to cut Huawei out, which is having an effect which ranges from zero in quite a lot of countries to having quite a major one in countries like Australia. And then there are intermediate cases like Britain where Huawei has been admitted into certain parts of the network, but not other parts of the network. That's going to be just going to slow down the rollout of 5G, because Huawei is just the most advanced country in the world.
It can be predicted there will be a huge demand for talent or professionals in the 5G era. How should China and other participants get prepared in the face of possible talent shortage?
Well, it's going to be the question of education. I mean, China is sort of expanding its education facilities greatly, because although China's economy is growing very fast, the average level of skill of the workforce and education qualification is still lower than in advanced countries, or to put it in technical economic terms, quantitative growth of the labour force still plays a bigger role than qualitative growth of the labour force in China. So this will add great impetus to the educational facilities of China. The reason that this has to go somewhat more slowly than 5 years, of course, it takes time to do it. I mean, if you look from somebody who's taken a PhD, to take the most extreme, you're looking at probably 18 years between when they enter the education system and when they qualify. So there's a limit to what you can do. For training people, it takes some time, but China will just have to put big resources at it, and which it's doing, and then the problem will be solved. It's only basically a question of time. The technological problems are already solved.
John Ross, Senior Fellow of the Shenyang Institute for Financial Studies of Renmin University, speaking with Sui. The Chinese central bank says it'll exempt service charges on enterprise and individual credit report inquiries at 10 types of rural, private, and small financial institutions. The exemption will apply to those financial institutions from the start of March to the end of June. The central bank says an estimated 160 million yuan, or roughly $24 million in fees, will be cut through these actions to help enterprises and individuals through their difficulties. There's been a surge in food orders since the coronavirus outbreak. A lot of restaurants and hotels are trying to adapt with a focus on delivery services. And Zhuang Shixuan has more.
It's just 10:30 in the morning, but the entrance to this hot pot restaurant in Pudong is already full of takeout packages. The restaurant reopened on February the 19th, but has kept its dining service shut, providing only delivery service. This hot pot restaurant is now selling 115 kilograms of beef a day. In the past, it might have gotten 70 or 80 delivery orders a day, but now it's getting more than 200. The cost per order is around 300 yuan. This hotel in Shanghai's Xi'an district has been offering meal deliveries online for the past week, charging an average of 70 yuan for each. Food and beverage sales would normally account for 45% of the hotel's revenue, but since the outbreak, they're down by 95%. Online sales cannot make up for all of that, but they do help ease the losses. The restaurant business in China is gradually returning to normal, but most restaurants are still suspending dining business because of the coronavirus. The Shanghai government approved restaurants that want to resume operation and has so far given the go-ahead to 150 firms covering more than 3,000 individual outlets, allowing them to provide food delivery service.
That was Zhang Shishran reporting about premium hotels trying to sustain their businesses amid the virus outbreak. You're listening to the Beijing Hour. Coming up in sports, talk of postponing the Tokyo Summer Olympic Games. The Beijing Hour.
Hello, I'm Peter Hinkle. And Days of Future Past. You are listening to the Beijing Hour.
Hi, I'm Kathy Freeman, and you're listening to the Beijing Hour.
Hi everyone, I'm Lang Lang. Welcome to the Beijing Hour.
The Beijing Hour, your window to China and the world.
It's 47 minutes past the hour. Turning to sports now, here's Yang Guang.
Thank you, Shane. Japanese Olympic Minister Saiko Hashimoto says the Tokyo 2020 Games could be postponed until later this year because of the coronavirus outbreak.
Tokyo's Olympic 2020 host city contract only says if the games are not to be held within 2020, the IOC has a right to cancel the games. It depends on how this is interpreted, but it can be read as allowing a postponement within 2020.
However, the Japanese government and the International Olympic Committee are still committed to hosting the Games on July the 24th as originally planned. Under the hosting agreement, the right to cancel the Games remains with the IOC. Thomas Bach reiterated that his organization remains confident about the success of the Tokyo event.
There is a task force in place since mid-February, and following the regular information from this task force, we remain very confident with regard to the success of these Olympic Games Tokyo 2020. I would like to encourage all the athletes to continue their preparation for the Olympic Games with great confidence and with full steam.
There have been 12 deaths in Japan caused by the virus. Most schools, sports competitions, and Olympic-related events in the country have been shut down. The Olympics have been cancelled only 3 times, all during wartime. In football, the previously unbeatable Liverpool has suffered 3 defeats in 2 weeks after a 2-0 loss to Chelsea in the FA Cup. Chelsea went through to the quarterfinals thanks to William and Ross Barkley's goals scored in each half. Liverpool made 7 changes to the side that surprisingly lost to Watford on Saturday, the first loss of their league campaign. In other action, Newcastle edged the West Bromwich 3-2 to reach the last 8. In Germany, Bayern Munich stayed on course for domestic double with a 1-0 win over Schalke in the German Cup. Bayern has won 5 of the last 10 editions of the Cup and lived up to its reputation as Joshua Kimmich scored the winning goal against the Schalke in their quarter-final. In the Asian Champions League last night, South Korean powerhouse Suwon Samsung Bruins suffered a shock 2-1 defeat to Jewel Daru Kazim in Group G. The draw for the second edition of the UEFA Nations League has taken place in Amsterdam. France and Croatia will face a rematch of the World Cup final after being drawn together. The pair are in Group 3 in League 1, along with defending champions Portugal and Sweden. France coach Didier Deschamps.
From the moment that you are in the top group, you only have top quality opponents. This competition was also designed to replace friendlies, so we will have the opportunity to play big games. I think it's good for everyone, and for the players as well. They stay focused.
Meanwhile, Germany has a tough task in Group 4, where they will face Spain, Switzerland, and Ukraine. England faces a fresh encounter with Iceland in Group 2, which also features Belgium and Denmark. Italy was drawn with Poland, Bosnia, and the Netherlands. The tournament will be played from September to November, with the finals in June next year. The island of Tahiti in the South Pacific has been approved as the site of the 2024 Paris Olympics surfing venue, even though it's 15,000 kilometers away from the French capital. Tahiti was picked in December as the preferred option over rival beaches on the French mainland.
The other sports events will remain in France. Surfing will make its Olympic debut at the Tokyo Games. The International Table Tennis Federation has announced reforms to the sports event structure. The sport will have Grand Smashes similar to Grand Slam events in tennis, as well as World Series events. The newly founded World Table Tennis Organization under the ITTF will run contests starting from next year. As planned, there are four Grand Smashes every year with a 10-day span for each tournament, featuring the top 64 players competing for up to $3 million. The WTT series action will take place throughout the year with $8 million in prize money up for grabs. ITTF says the new structure is expected to provide a more entertaining experience for players, fans, and broadcasters. Motorsport Managing Director Ross Brown says future Formula One races could be affected if a hosting country denies access to any team due to the coronavirus restrictions.
You know, if a team is prevented from entering a country, we can't have a race. Not a Formula One World Championship race anyway, because that would be unfair. So I think it's essential that we have all the teams at the races and we have everyone able to attend and compete properly.
Italy, home of Ferrari, is one of the countries most affected by the epidemic. Some countries, including Vietnam, which hosts its first ever Grand Prix on April the 5th, have imposed quarantine periods on anyone who has come from or been in Italy during a 2-week period prior to entry. That has raised concern in some countries about Ferrari's ability to participate. The Formula One season starts in Melbourne on March the 15th with Bahrain the weekend after. In the NHL, there are 10 games today with early action starting in the next 10 minutes. Those contests include the Montreal Canadiens visiting the New York Islanders. The St. Louis Blues are the New York Rangers, and the Ottawa Senators are taking on the Pittsburgh Penguins. Half an hour later, the Boston Bruins and the Tampa Bay Lightning. These are two of the top teams in the Eastern Conference. The later highlights include Oilers and the Stars starting at 9:30 and the Maple Leafs and the Sharks starting at 11:30.
Thank you very much. You're listening to the Beijing Hour. Coming up in entertainment, Woody Allen is finally releasing a memoir. It's 54 past the hour. In entertainment news, a memoir by Woody Allen, rumored for years, is coming out next month. Grand Central Publishing's announced that the book is called Apropos of Nothing and will be released on April 7th. 84-year-old Allen's an Oscar-winning filmmaker known for such works as Annie Hall and The Purple Rose of Cairo. His latest work is A Rainy Day in New York, released in Europe last year.
You're by far the most interesting American director.
Allen's current production, Rifkin's Festival, starring Christoph Waltz, was shot last summer and is now seeking distribution. An Allen memoir nearly came out nearly 2 decades ago. He had reportedly reached a multi-million-dollar deal with Penguin in 2003, but changed his mind. New Hulu miniseries Devs, featuring Nick Offerman, had its premiere in Hollywood.
It was only ever an illusion.
The sci-fi series spins around a computer engineer snooping around a tech company that may be responsible for the disappearance of her boyfriend, and bad things begin to happen. Offerman plays the creepy quantum computing magnate in the series.
Devs is a sci-fi adjacent thriller that explores some very human questions concerning how far we're willing to take our technology when driven by grief.
Devs was written and directed by Oscar-nominated British screenwriter Alex Garland. The first 2 episodes of Devs debut on Hulu tomorrow. Barbie has launched a new collection of female sporting role models to celebrate International Women's Day. Part of the Barbie Dream Gap project, the collection sees multiple European athletes transformed into dolls. Barbie marketing director Isabel Fair says the collection of role models released ahead of the 2020 Olympic Games aims to show girls they can be anything they want to be. The lineup includes British world champion sprinter Dina Escher-Smith and French football captain Amandine Henry. 56 past the hour. Beijing today, sunny skies and 8 degrees Celsius, a low of -2. Chongqing will be cloudy and 14, a low of 9. Alaska's partly cloudy and +3, a low of -6. Hong Kong is getting clouds and 21 degrees, a low of 18. In North America, Washington, D.C. is getting a high of sunshine and a high of 17 Celsius. New York City is a bit breezy and 12 degrees. In Africa, Nairobi is getting clouds and 24. And finally to Oceania, Port Vila's mostly sunny and 29 degrees Celsius. And that's it for this edition of the Beijing Hour. Making news this morning, China's rolling out measures to stabilize its economic and social development during the coronavirus outbreak. And 2 Chinese provinces have released plans to begin the spring semester as the spread of the virus begins to slow. On behalf of the staff, this is Shane Bigham in the Chinese capital, hoping you'll join us for the next edition of the Beijing Hour and open a window to the world together.